McLaughlin chasing history. She gets under 48 seconds, the second fastest time in history.
And there you have it. Another huge record broken in track and field. This is Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone from the United States. And in the 2025 World Track and Field Championships in Tokyo, Japan, she did something that I wasn't sure that I would see in my lifetime. In the women's 400 meters, McLaughlin threw down a time of 47.78 seconds, taking yet another global gold medal, and in the process, she took down two of the greatest one-lap runners of all time. And only adding to the historic standard of this performance, McLaughlin-Levrone broke the 400-meter championship record that was set all the way back in 1983, where Jarmila Kratochvílová set the previous mark at 47.99 seconds. Taking down any kind of record that has stood for more than 4 decades is without doubt a special moment, but this performance was different. This performance represented a brand new kind of dominance that nobody has ever seen before. But this also just speaks as to how talented, how clutch, and how undeniably great Sydney truly is. And with this win in mind, is she actually the greatest world championship competitor to ever compete? Well, some are actually putting forth numbers that prove that she just might be the greatest. Throughout the history of track and field, we have seen countless great athletes lace up. There's Maurice Greene in the 90s and in the early 2000s. There was Jackie Joyner-Kersee, who proved to be one of the greatest all-around athletes to ever compete. There was Jonathan Edwards, who proved himself as the greatest triple jumper of all time. And we also saw more than 30 world records fall from the pole vaulting legend Sergei Bubka, as he proved himself as the single greatest pole vaulter from 1984 through 1994. These talents completely changed the way that everyone competed in athletics. But one of the most established and agreed upon legends in World Championship history is none other than Usain Bolt from Jamaica. If we go back to 2009, Bolt shocked the world in both the 100 and the 200 meters, breaking both world records with times of 9.58 and 19.19 seconds. These two world records still stand to this day, and not only was his 2009 season amazing, but Bolt also went on to win the 100 and the 200 meters multiple times in the World Champs, as he was close to unbeatable on many of the world's biggest stages. The only real blemish to his championship record racing was in the men's 100 in the 2011 World Champs, where Bolt unfortunately false started and his teammate Johan Blake stepped up to take the win. But other than that, Bolt had cemented his name in history as the greatest and most consistent athlete of all time. Bolt honestly changed the game completely, and when we go to the World Championship records in athletics, we can see that Bolt currently has 3 of these records to his name: the 100, the 200, and also the 4x100 meters, which goes back to the 2011 World Champs. This makes Bolt the only athlete in history to hold 3 World Championship records to his name, again proving that this Jamaican legend is just untouchable when it comes to championship running. But wait, I'm missing something here. Oh yeah, Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone has officially tied Usain Bolt with 3 World Championship records to her name after this 2025 World Champs. In the 400 meters, the 400-meter hurdles, and now the 4x400 relay, McLaughlin has officially earned her spot 3 times on this World Champ record list, which is something that up until this season, only Usain Bolt had ever attained. But you might have noticed something unique about Sydney's accomplishments, and that's that owning both records in the open 400 and the 400 hurdles makes her the only athlete to ever achieve this feat. Traditionally, when an athlete specializes in either the 400 or the 400 hurdles, they will usually stick to that specific event for their entire careers, and this applies to an even higher degree in the 400 hurdles. In the history of the World Outdoor Champs, every previous winner in the women's 400 hurdles has never even won a medal in the Open 400 in either the Olympics or the Outdoor World Championships, making the fact that Sydney even won a medal close to a miracle in the first place. To be able to have both the 400 meters and the 400 hurdles to your name is honestly just beyond belief. But the other side of Sydney's 400 record that makes it so unbelievable is the fact that she took down a record that many believe was assisted by performance-enhancing drugs. Back in the early to mid-1980s, many athletes were discovered to have been a part of a much wider state doping program. These highly illegal operations were somewhat of a standard for years back then, especially before randomized controlled testing became the normal. And for this 400 championship record, Jarmila Kratochvílová has been one of the primary athletes alleged to have been a part of these programs. From her becoming the first woman to ever break 48 in the 400, to holding the still-standing women's 800 record at 153.28, this Czech athlete achieved some things that many still believe were actually unbelievable. But fast forward some 42 years later, and we officially see this 47.99-second record broken. Now, in stark contrast to the men's 100 record, which has been broken 17 times since 1983, this women's 400 world record has only been improved upon once, and that improvement took place all the way back in 1985. And this completely opposite statistic tells a very big story, and that's that this women's 400 record was one of the most unbreakable to ever take place in World Championship history, and it makes Sydney McLaughlin-Lavrone's time that much more amazing. Now, to join Usain Bolt as the only other athlete with 3 championship records to your name is already a lifetime achievement in itself. But because of her double event status, her untouchable records, and her undefeated streak, some are calling for Sydney to be named as not just the best runner in the world right now, but possibly the single greatest to ever compete in track and field. Now, I personally believe that it is just way too early to start making such massive claims like this, especially given that Sydney still has multiple years left in her career. But when we compare Usain Bolt directly next to McLaughlin-Lavrone, we can see some pretty amazing side-by-side stats. Now, when it comes to the overall world athletics score of these athletes, Bolt simply has the win here. His 100 and 200 world records hold scores of 1356 and 1352, and for McLaughlin, her 400 hurdles record is certainly amazing, with a score of 1322, but for her 400 PB, it only reaches up to 1296. Now, some have claimed that this score has been artificially deflated, given the insane world record that Marita Koch set in 1985. And yes, had this record not taken place, McLaughlin's score would be higher, but the reality is, McLaughlin still stands at number 2 all-time, despite breaking the world champ record of Kratochvílová. Now, in McLaughlin's career, she has already broken 6 individual world records in the 400-meter hurdles, as she's lowered the record all the way down to 50.37. However, if we jump over to Usain Bolt, we can see that he broke a total of 5 individual world records in both the 100 and the 200. Amazingly, McLaughlin-Lavrone actually has one more individual world record to her name than the great Bolt. And while some would argue that Bolt's events were more competitive and that he made quicker jumps to his all-time performances, the reality stands that McLaughlin currently has 6 compared to Bolt's 5. And no, this does not include relay world records. Moving over to undefeated stretches, this is where things get quite interesting. To this day, McLaughlin-Lavrone has not lost a single 400 hurdles race since 2019. But there is a small asterisk next to this record, because in 2020 and 2023, McLaughlin did not compete in the 400 hurdles. But despite missing these 2 seasons in this event, the reality stands that she has won 24 straight races in the 400 hurdles, and this undefeated record dates back approximately 7 years in the past. Now, for Bolt's longest winning streak, he had a total of 45 consecutive wins in the 100, dating from 2013 through 2017. And while this stretch is almost double the amount of wins that McLaughlin-Lavrone has achieved, his total time period of being undefeated is slightly less. Clearly, both of these athletes have some pretty insane highs throughout their careers, as to even join this conversation, you practically have to be unbeatable for close to a decade. But by far, the most interesting statistic to break down here is the margin of victory to the next closest athletes in the biggest championship moments for both runners. Now for McLaughlin-Levrone, her championship wins really started in the 2021 Olympics, as she took the gold in Tokyo over Dalilah Muhammad from the US. And throughout her careers, she has averaged a winning margin of 1.665% over her competition during her biggest championship moments, dating from 2021 up until the present day. This is dominance and consistency combined into one incredible resume. And if we do the exact same to Usain Bolt, we see some very similar outcomes. For Bolt, his racing career was longer and it was certainly more demanding, and while his biggest win was more of a percentage margin over his competition, his total percentage average comes out to 1.378%, just slightly under that of Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone. Now at first glance, it did seem as though Sydney is simply more dominant. Her average win is slightly higher and she has just dominated since 2021. But upon looking closer, there are a few key things going on here. For one, Bolt's running was simply more of a physical demand compared to McLaughlin-Levrone. He doubled in the 100 and the 200, he ran rounds in both events, and this undoubtedly took away from his margins of victory in both events. And while this certainly made it harder to compete against his peers, the other thing that is happening is that Bolt's championship wins stretched for twice the total duration compared to Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone. Now, if we took only Bolt's wins from 2008 through 2012, which is the time period of Sydney McLaughlin's career so far, we can see that Bolt's average margin of victory was 1.91%, slightly higher compared to Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone, which to me proves a more dominant career. The reality is that both athletes are historically talented, and both athletes have winning records that we rarely see in any generation. And while Sydney has many more years left in her career, I currently think that you simply have to give the overall advantage to Bolt. He's had so many wins, so many titles, and his career stretched for 3 Olympic cycles. And don't forget, this man won the triple gold medal in every single Olympics. Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone has certainly achieved unforgettable status in the track world, but after all of her races are finally finished, and after all of her titles are attained, where do you think she will rank among every athlete that has ever competed in athletics? Thanks for watching, everyone. Until next time.